Well, it's my challenge and my pleasure to tell you this evening a little bit about W.B. Potts, one of my ancestors. So I can either tell it about him or I can claim to be him, but I'll go the former rather than the latter. This is a photo of W.B. Potts. He looks like a stern man. I don't know, I did not know him, nor did I know his son, Warren Potts. But I am told by the family history that I was able to gather up that he was born in approximately 1850 and died in 1926. You know, so many people that are a part of building this town, this community, this country, really had challenging upbringing. From what I hear, his parents died when he was a young boy, so he lived with some of his kinsmen, and that's part of his upbringing, part of the challenge of growing up and becoming a man. I would describe W.B. Potts as a capitalist. I'm not sure I would say he's an entrepreneur, although he may have been. But he's a capitalist in that he was involved. I don't know whether John Clark is going to mention this to you, but I've heard John Clark speak about a number of substantial businesses in the community that W.B. Potts was one of the shareholders, directors, or owners of. The Potts Oliver store you may have already heard about. I think that was one of the enterprises. The other, of course, was Merchants and Farmers Bank, which was chartered in 1890. And he was also involved in the oil mill, I think here and in Crenshaw. W.B. Potts had two wives, one of whom died as a young lady at about the age of 27 years old, had two sets of children. One set, my grandfather Warren Potts was by one of his wives, and Coleman Potts, T.C. Potts, who some of you remember, was by his first wife. There are some names that are intermingled, I guess, if you study his life and his business ventures. One is Meek. I think the Potts Oliver store may have had Meek in its ownership chain at one time. The other is Hammond. Another is Coleman, which explains, I guess, what I recall as a child, the friendship and affinity that J.P. Coleman and my father had. I think that we were kin to each other. Also, in the Meek name, and y'all may correct me here, but I've heard my family refer to Cousin Elma Meek. I think it's for a variety of reasons. I have an Ole Miss towel here to wipe perspiration off my face. But Elma Meek, for whom Meek Hall at Ole Miss is named, is a kinsman of mine through the lineage of W.B. Potts. And she was the one who named the annual the Ole Miss at Ole Miss. So I am told that's part of the family lore. But I think for lessons today, I think W.B. Potts would take a business risk. I think he partnered with other people. He invested in the community, and he accumulated some measure of wealth in the process. So what he did was for his own benefit, but it was also for the benefit of his business partners, the benefit of his customers, and the benefit of the community as a whole. Another thing about him, and I hate to, well, it's my charge to tell you some things about him, but he had a summer home in Delavan, Wisconsin, which was probably unusual back in those days. That's where my mother and father spent their honeymoon. Drove from here to Delavan, Wisconsin. And I remember going there on a family trip when I was a young adult and bumped into somebody who remembered seeing we found the house and remembered seeing a newlywed couple there in Delavan, which happened to be my mother and father. He was not unacquainted with tragedy in that he lost his first wife, and he lost two young grandchildren by automobile accident. One was Burton Potts, at the age of 16, was killed on a bus that was traveling from here to Starkville, a school bus, and a truck passed that was loaded with hay bales and he stuck his head out the window, and he was struck and perished in that incident. And my aunt Renee had 3 small children, married a Guyton, which is another intermingled name, familiar name to Kosciusko, and she was killed in an automobile accident up in Illinois. My Aunt Mary Virginia and my grandmother Mary Hammond Potts raised those 3 young children until Mr. Guyton remarried again. So I think, that life story is not unlike many others. Opportunity, hardship, tragedy, selflessness, and as you can tell by his facial expression, I would imagine that he was a pretty hard-nosed businessman. But those things combined, and of course the bank was a part of the history and the development and the prosperity and the growth of Kosciusko and Talbot County for about 125 years. So those are my remarks about, I'll say one other thing, and that is that my grandfather Warren Potts, and some of the ladies, some of the people here probably may remember that, but he had a public reputation for being an outspoken, devout Christian man who was saved over here at the courthouse at a revival service as an adult. But it changed his life dramatically and affected his children and subsequent generations. I do not find, even aunts and uncles talk kindly about the older generation. I have not found anyone who spoke in those kinds of terms about W.B. Potts. So with that, I'll leave it.
Good job.